So in this video, I'm going to talk about formal writing. So when you write formal English, this means that you don't write slang. It means that we don't write in conversational English. When we write formal writing, we are writing formally for our teacher and for our boss. Types of formal writing include research papers in college, some newspapers, official documents or records, and business reports at work. Avoid using contractions in formal English. Contractions make our writing sound too informal, too conversational. Examples of contractions include can't or won't. It is better to write out those words as cannot or will not, because then when you write out the contraction, it sounds more formal and professional. Also, in formal writing, we use third-person case, he, she, or they, for a more objective tone. We want to avoid writing our personal opinions when we want to avoid first-person case, I, my, us, mine, we. And we avoid writing in second-person case, you and your, in formal English. Instead, in formal English, we focus on third-person case, he, she, and they, because that has a more objective and professional tone. If we use an outside source, such as using a statistic, we have to cite the source. We can never use Wikipedia for our papers, because the problem with the Wikipedia is that it lacks credibility because it lacks in-text citations. And so whenever you have a paper that has figures and statistics, but they don't cite the source, then that paper lacks credibility, it lacks ethos. And you start to wonder, where did that information come from? Did that writer just make it up? So when you use an outside source, you have to cite the author, the date, and the page number so that the reader knows where you got the information from to increase the credibility of your paper and to avoid plagiarism. We use passive voice in formal writing to add credibility to our writing. We form passive voice by having to be plus a past participle. An example of passive voice would be the tree was run over by a car, or the tree was run into by a car. So in passive voice, the subject receives the action of being run over by the object. Writing in passive voice makes the writer more believable and credible. When we cite a source, we want to include the author, the date, and the page number. So a good way to write a signal phrase or an in-text citation in order to signal to the reader that you're about to cite a fact or cite a source is you could say, according to Dr. Smith, the pandemic is over. So then you would write, here you have the author's name, Dr. Smith, then you have the page number, then you have the date and the page number. When we use a statistic, also include the source. So here you would say 67% of Americans die from gun violence. So here you have the author's last name, the date, and the page number. Another way of saying it is according to Dr. Smith, 67% of Americans die from gun violence. As long as you cite the author, date, and page number, then you have a good in-text citation. And so when we use a paraphrase quote, we just need the author's name and the date, no quotation marks. And when we use a direct quote, then we have to have quotation marks and the page number. And so we use APA, which stands for American Psychological Association, to give credit to the researcher and to avoid plagiarism. If we simply state the statistics without citing the source, then we are committing plagiarism and stealing information from the researcher. Because if you just state the information without telling the reader who did the research, then you are stealing that information from the researcher. So always make sure that if you use statistic or any kind of uncommon knowledge, you need to cite the source. So this ends my video on formal writing. And I hope this helps you study for the quiz number 2. Also, don't forget to watch the video that appears right above your quiz, for that's what your quiz is based on.